Hello. Hello, everyone. We are going to be going through Second Samuel again. Where is he? Zoom, kill Zoom today. Yes, I was late. We're going to take 5 minutes, and then we'll see you soon. Going again through Second Samuel. So I hope to see you guys there. See you in 5 minutes. Cassandra, and Sandy. Hello. How is everyone?
Good.
Wonderful. Anything of note? Sandy, I haven't talked to you in a while. It's been a while since we got you on here.
I know. I was in an absolutely amazing conversation in other places and told them I had to leave because I had not been here for a while.
Well, you know what? I appreciate that feeling. Look, guilt is very helpful. So if you felt bad for us, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take a win as a win, okay?
I didn't exactly mention guilt, but yeah.
Well, you said you felt bad. What do you mean you felt bad? You don't mean that like you felt constipated. What do you mean? I assume it meant guilt or perhaps shame. A little bit of shame.
Is it possible I could have just simply missed you?
Okay. All right.
See, Sandra's nodding.
All right. Yeah, I accept that. Sandra, where are you? Look at that. Is there a wood stove behind you?
No, it's a gas heater.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm in a slightly different angle. Maybe I'm showing
Is
you
it
too
the
much
same?
of my house.
Yeah. You guys only see the one room and never show you the rest of it. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe this is just a set. Have you guys ever seen? Did you watch Black Mirror?
I've seen episodes of it. I've seen some of them.
There's one episode of Black Mirror, yeah, where this guy is like sends a video or something. What's the second word?
Black
mirror, like to see your own face. I don't look, Sandy. I don't recommend it to you. I really don't recommend it to you particularly.
Good. Too many things I was lined up.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Twilight Zone, but the purpose of every single episode is to make you feel bad. It's like the intention of it.
Hopeless, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, one episode ends very, very much with this like anarchist character sending a message from like a cell, and then it turns out that just a corner of his massive apartment is made to look that way. So he actually lives in, like, for all you know, there's like a mansion out there, but you guys only see this. You only see the one room in my apartment.
Yeah, green screen.
Yeah. This isn't even real. You think I'm working on a giant piece of art?
I was going to say there's progress. Like things move, so you're really committed to this.
Yeah. It's almost done. It's give me a month. I think in a month I'm going to be done. It's a lot of busy work has been done, and you can't even see how much work has been done. Like it's the construction of it is just about finished. Anyway, this is neither here nor there. We have people in the audience. We have Adam, we have Yon God, we have Dawn. So perhaps we get to it. Sandy, you're still coming next week for the reading, right? You're supposed to read. Oh, did I lose her?
She's muted.
Sandy, next. Okay, good.
I was just muted. No, it's okay. I was just muted. Sometimes I get told that my mic echoes. So, yes, I'm coming next week.
Excellent. So again, for those who leave early next. Yes. No, everyone's reading. Don't worry. No one's gonna have it memorized. If someone comes with it memorized, I'm gonna be upset, not happy. So Sandy's going to be reading a part of my play, which will be happening at this time next week. But let's get to the text. Yeah, right there. 2 Samuel chapter 4. That's where we're going to be. I always say it over and over again to make sure people can open up their Bibles as if they're not just listening. Like, you're just listening. It's fine. Cassandra, would you read first?
Okay, yes. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard that Abner had died at Hebron, his courage failed and all Israel was dismayed. Now Saul's son had 2 men who were captains of raiding bands. The name of the one was Banah, and the name of the other was Rechab. Sons of Rimmon, a man of Benjamin from Beroth, for Beroth also is counted part of Benjamin. The Berothites fled to Gittim and have been sojourners there to this day. Jonathan, the son of Saul, had a son who was crippled in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And as she fled in her haste, he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth.
Okay, pause 1 second. I love Mephibosheth. He's one of those characters. It's just like he's never the center of stuff. He's not even the center of this story. I don't even know why he's brought up at this point. But the idea is, as the news spreads, you can imagine as of Saul's death, there's people who might want to kill anyone who might be an heir of Saul. So this kid takes off and he falls, and it kind of gives this, I don't know how to what extent is he crippled in his feet, but it sounds like he's what's it called? That he's paralyzed. Okay, our pronunciation is being corrected.
Mephibosheth.
Okay, you know what? I accept that pronunciation. Ooh, Jason's calling us from the airport.
Okay.
So I just love this guy, but he's a child of Jonathan. David is going to show extra sympathy and love towards him, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Ishbosheth, not Mephibosheth. What is the? Yeah, there's certain people, they like certain sounds and names. And there's two guys who are absolute jerks. We can even see it in this. I don't know if you can tell. Captains of raiding bands. So they're there's groups of guys and they make their money stealing from other people. Right? Now, I don't know to what extent I'm just putting modern morals to this, because I think back in the day, groups of military dudes just had to do that, and that would have been accepted. But it seems like these are already guys I don't particularly like.
Right. Like Viking. Pillage, steal, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Not awesome dudes, but two guys. Anyway, we get introduced to Mephibosheth, but now we're going to go back to Ishbosheth. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before we go in deeper? Sandy, you're muted. No. Okay. You don't even want to say anything.
No, I'm
okay.
fine. I think, yeah.
Okay. Cassandra, go ahead.
Now the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, Rechab and Benah set out, and about the heat of the day they came to the house of Ishbosheth, as he was taking his noonday rest. And they came into the midst of the house as if to get wheat, and they stabbed him in the stomach. Then Rechab and Benah, his brother, escaped. When they came into the house as he lay on his bed in his bedroom, they struck him and put him to death and beheaded him. They took his head and went by the way of the Arabah all night, and brought the head of Ishbosheth to David at Hebron. And they said to the king, "Here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. The Lord has avenged my lord the king this day on Saul and on his offspring." But David answered Rechab and Benah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life out of every adversity, when one told me, 'Behold, Saul is dead,' and thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and killed him at Ziklag, which was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more, when wicked men have killed a righteous man in his own house, on his own bed, shall I not now require his blood and feet and hang them?" Oh, it's at the bottom.
Yeah, sorry. Michael. Okay, let's you know what? Let's just we'll pause right there. Oh, Cassandra. Can you guys hear Cassandra? Is she silent to you too?
I heard her. I heard her a second ago.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Now I hear you.
She came in and out a few times on my.
Okay. All right. Who knows? Who knows what's happening? So this bit, okay, sorry, comments from other people, because I've kind of talked about this before. So any thoughts from anyone? None. Okay. Okay, go
Why
ahead,
did he
Sandra.
cut off their hands and feet?
Cut off his hands and feet. Love it. Yeah. Yoav. Hello.
Hello. Okay, if you really want my comments, also answering Yon God as usual. Lots of people are coming and going very fast from entering the stage and leaving the stage very fast, and we have to know their names. What I make it first, the names are meaningful. There's always more to the name than actually a name. And second, I think it's a summary. People knew this story in much more detail. It was a longer, it had more meat in it. And this is just the summary that put on writing long after. So we have two people with the name of ending with Boshet, like Mephibosheth and Ish-Boshet. So, and Boshet is shame. And it's a good joke if you have one of them. I mean, you probably had a good name, and some secretary of David distorted it for the joke. Having two of them is too much. Then I must attach some meaning to it. And I'm trying to recover what were the original names for the two of them. And it probably ended with Seth. I mean, names always had usually for important people, there was the names carried the name of a deity. So we have people whose name ends with the name of the deity Seth, which is a bit anachronistic, but still possible if the story is really ancient. So no wonder somebody in the Bible wanted to distort the name.
That's a very interesting idea. So that the character is based on a real person, but the name would have been changed to carry with it the notion of shame. That Saul's children carry some level of shame with them. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, and another thing, just to verify, is the story told twice in the chapter? They seem to be killing the poor man, and then killing him again.
Yeah, so it does state it that way. The Septuagint, that's what the note is Septuagint, and behold, the doorkeeper of the house had been cleaning wheat, but she grew drowsy and slept. So Rechab and Baana, his brother, slipped in. So in the Septuagint version, they have fallen asleep, like the door people have fallen asleep. So it doesn't, in the Septuagint, it only tells the story of the murder once, and the entering in is related to something else. Yeah, they came into the midst of the house as if to get wheat, and they stabbed him in the stomach. Then Rechab and Baana, his brother, escaped. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And so there's some questions because there's going to be another story coming up soon where I think we have evidence of an issue with the Masoretic text. I know this upsets some people, but there's another character named Goliath who is killed by, depending on how you understand it, could be the brother of David, or the brother of Goliath gets killed by someone completely different. What's going on in the text? And it seems to be that there's an issue in the Masoretic text. I'm sure that Chezi has a good explanation for it, but yeah, it's interesting that there is a significant difference narrative-wise what's going on here between the Septuagint and the Masoretic.
Yeah, I mean, after reading in Genesis that the world was created twice, I mean, it's not a great wonder that a man was killed twice. But usually there would be a mountain of explanation behind it, and just not the scholarly enough to know any of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also, I feel, maybe this is just me, a connection that he's killed in his bed. That is a connection with Judges where, what's it called? Yael kills, what is it, Sisera? And then also the image of Eglon killing Ehud while he's in his bedroom as well. And then they take his head and they slip out. Any other thoughts from anyone else? So we also have this image again of David being just the best dude and being super nice to Saul and all of Saul's descendants. So these guys think if we're now switching from Team Benjamin to Team Judah, then bringing the head of one of Saul's children, and not just that, this is the child that is that it has been crowned king. He's put himself into the position of king. So you would especially think David would want this guy dead. So that David is upset that the enemy king has been killed shows just how nice of a dude he is. Anything else?
I think we talked last time about like how it would look if David was going to have the king killed or something, right?
Right.
So I was thinking, I guess part of this too is that he punished them to let him know that this isn't something that he wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Because I think that would cause like an even bigger rift in the kingdom. If it looks like he wanted the king's sons assassinated.
Yeah, one of the bits that I also find very interesting is the idea of David's goodness that we fully see here. And we're going to do the next chapter too, because this story is very short. It's basically the last story where David is completely, without complication, a good dude. But it's also right before he's made fully king, right? So I even titled this stream Samuel Fully King, because the fully king part is that this is the removal of the false king. And in the very beginning of the next chapter, David is made fully king. Everyone, even all the other tribes, have now put him into that position. And it's kind of the end of David being completely good all the time. I know. It's only a fool that says that David sinned, but we're trying to understand the text, the complication of what he is like. And so to what extent the elements of power are going to affect him. But right now, as he's coming up, he's doing everything. He's doing everything you'd want a good king to do. Okay, let's go. Verse 11. Sandy, can I get you to read? It's nothing against you, Cassandra. It's just I'm not hearing enough from Sandy, so I'm going to make her read. You do have to unmute.
Sorry.
This is
I was
one
closing
condition
some windows in case that's why I was having trouble with the sound, and so yeah, you can get me to read.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
From verse 11.
where how much more when wicked men have killed a righteous man in his own house on his bed, shall I not now require his blood at your hand and destroy you from the earth? And David commanded his young men, and they killed them and cut off their hands and feet and hanged them beside the pool at Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the tomb of Abner at Hebron.
Okay, so this becomes a tradition that you want all the bones in particular to be together. So the cutting the guys apart, that scene is especially shameful. It's honoring to put the head like with in the family tomb. And this element right here, that hanged them, the putting the bodies on display, I've mentioned before, was to show God's judgment on them. So Christians in particular know the quote from Deuteronomy, "Cursed is anyone who is hung on a tree." The hanging of an enemy was to show God's judgment upon them, especially if they were a rival king, or like or they betrayed a king, or they were a king. Michael Sartori has not said anything, and he always has thoughts.
Well, it's just interesting with this chapter and the last one. I mean, it seems like David's really just kind of trying to change the culture, which is, to bring it into line with the scripture, the law that God's already given the Israelites, because they just kind of tend to fall into this pagan way of thinking, like, if I kill this guy, somebody else will be happy about it. It's like he's trying, which puts him in a tough position, because it's like, he's kind of doing the same thing, but he's trying to make an example of it, trying to make a point, like, because it's like the law says, if you shed blood, your blood will be shed, and so these guys are getting what they deserve, but these guys and the and Abner, and even the guy that he's talking about there who killed Saul, like, they're not doing it the right way. It's not out of self-defense or anything like that. It's this whole mindset that, like, killing your enemies is something that you should be rewarded for. So that's obviously, and that's why God chose David and not some other guy, because he is trying to bring the culture into line with God's law. But so that, and then hanging up the hands, it's like, please stop bringing me dead guys' heads. Like,
I was gonna say that's kind of what they would do with like thieves and things, right, or something like that.
Yeah. Kurt, can I get you to say hello?
Hello.
Okay, good. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure it was Kurt. Sorry.
Michael.
No. I understand.
Jacob gets really on my ass about interrupting.
No. I just wanted to make sure that it was you. I'm glad it's you. I just wanted to make sure that it was, in fact, you. Oh, is that a deer?
Yeah,
that is. That's beautiful.
Just at a park. Yeah, and there's like 3 of them around here. There's probably more. But
that's amazing. Yeah, no, I think you're quite right. And I don't know if I ever quoted this Peterson bit. One of my favorite bits of relationship advice that came from Peterson is he talked about how between a husband and a wife, you don't want to win the argument too much. because you still have to live with the other person. So I really think it's very wise. Like, you don't want to completely destroy them because you still want to be in the house at the same time, right? And you want them to like you. They want all this other stuff, right? And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and that's part of what David is doing here. Is you want to defeat Benjamin, but you still want them to be, they're still part of Israel. They're not something else. Yeah. Who is David Walker? I don't even know who that is.
Oh, David, he's been around for a long time. He hasn't been around recently too much, but I had a good conversation with David on my channel long ago. He's a smart guy.
Okay, good. All right, we're going to go back to the text. Michael, now that I've heard your voice, perhaps you would read for us for just this section.
Okay. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "Behold, we are your bone and flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. And the Lord said to you, you shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel." So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years.
Okay, that's not symbolic of anything, okay? Don't look into that at all, Michael, all right?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, so the beginning at 30 is, I think, a very significant idea. It's also the age, unless I'm mistaken, that Saul begins to be king. And it would be even when a priest would start as king. So he's fully a man. He's not like a young man. He's not a child, right? There's certain kings that will be like, they'll be a child and they'll reign for like 5 years, right? He's fully a man, fully established in his kingdom is within his hands. Even this image, we are your bone and your flesh. Remember, there's people within this group who are much more related to Saul's family. So to say we are flesh and blood with you is a big thing for that reason. Like, we identify more with you than we do with these other ones. You have a reference to being the shepherd, which David was from his childhood. And then this crazy bit, I've lost track of how many times dude has been anointed. He's been made king so many times, but this is like the fully made king. So many makings of kings. Any other comments?
I wonder if, David not seeking out the other guy's death. What's his name? Ishbosheth. So was he claiming to be king, or was it just other people that were claiming he was king? Or
it says that it's Abner that made him king.
Okay. I mean, if David was okay with it, I wonder if it's even, on a conceptual level, like, if Israel can have a king, can the tribes of Israel also have kings? Or, and I guess you could say the natural evolution towards from a nation to becoming an empire would be that it grows. Like, even in the United States, it's like the states are more close, like, it varies, but it's more like the nations of Europe, land wise and population wise and stuff like that. So I wonder if that was like part of why David wasn't really,
Well,
the
now-
one
now you
driving
put-
the war.
Now you've put an idea in my mind, I think, even by just posing the question, which is a different direction. But what if David being good to Ishbosheth is exactly what makes the other tribes come on side? That he punishes the people that kill, like because he did it at first. He punished the guys who immediately killed it, but it's like this has become a pattern. It's not just a one-time thing. He's done it more than once. He's done this like in big ways. This could be how he brings everyone in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think because if you think about even just the fact that Saul was made king, and then he's chasing after David and sending him into exile and stuff, like it's just not a good king. If the king is insecure and he has to be the greatest one, and he can't live with people that are, it's like whatever the tallest the stalk of wheat that grows above the rest, and is going to get cut off. Like nobody wants to live in that kingdom, but obviously that's a pattern of behavior that's only going to spiral in one direction, and it's not good. So so obviously David does contrast his character and his way of ruling with Saul. Saul's was probably much more in line with the nations around them, the way that people saw things go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. It really establishes that David's security. He's not an insecure ruler. Okay, if no one else has anything to say, then Kirk, you're going to read. We're going to give it 3 seconds to see if anyone has anything else to say. Go ahead, Kirk.
Okay. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who said to David, "You will not come in here, but the blind and the lame will ward you off," thinking, "David cannot come in here." Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, that is, the city of David. And David said on that day, "Whoever would strike the Jebusites, let him get up the water shaft to attack the lame and the blind, who are hated by David's soul." Therefore it is said, "The blind and the lame shall not come into the house." And David lived in the stronghold and called it the city of David. And David built the city all around from Milo inward. And David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him.
Okay, let's pause a second here, because this sounds like David is delighting in killing a bunch of people who are lame and blind. Okay, but the idea was, this is one of those things that you kind of need an explanation for, is that the city was so well defended that you didn't need real soldiers even to do it, and so it was such a well, like strategically it was so strategically difficult for someone to attack that you could have people who were injured and all this stuff be in charge of it. Yeah, not seeing how cool and awesome David is makes you blind and lame, Avi, 100%. But yeah, so this image of the lame and the blind, it's the idea that it's so well established you don't need full-fledged soldiers to take it. And the only way in, and someone has actually traced this, so you can find videos of people doing it. It's an underground, so it's completely dark, water shaft that, unless I'm mistaken, is like the latrine. It's the only way to sneak in. So some guy in pitch black, maybe a torch, is climbing through the sewer system. You kind of got to picture Andy Dufresne, but climbing up into the city is how he gets in there in order to take it over. And then this is how Jerusalem's taken. Sorry, go ahead, Yoav.
I don't think it's a latrine. I think it's the water source, because the fortified city will be on top of the one of the hills, and the water source is at the foot of the hill. So what you do is you hide the water source very well. You build some wall around it, and you cover it with the earth, and you hide the water source, and you lead the water somehow into the city. That's that historical geographical fact in Jerusalem. I just cannot be sure that it already happened in the time of the Jebusites.
See if I can find stuff. There's a bunch of images that come up if you're looking at it, if you're looking at possibilities. Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly this thing would function. Some of the images. You can imagine someone having to. Oh, there's. Either way, also not just that you're going through this cave system, but that there's water in it. It doesn't particularly seem nice to be going through. All right. Cassandra, would you read for us now? Oh, you are muted.
Just a comment. I'm glad people are liking my version. It's more than a version. It's a fact. You can go to Jerusalem, and you can go up the water channel today. It exists. You can walk it in the water. I mean, It's a nice trip to do with kids if you're visiting Jerusalem.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because you need something. Like everyone likes the idea of a city built on a hill, but there's a problem with a city built on a hill is that people need water. People need an incredible amount of water. So how do you, if the higher up you are, the higher the water has to go.
Mm-hmm.
Young God has poop-based theories. That's great. Okay, Cassandra, go ahead in this next little bit.
And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David in cedar trees, also carpenters and masons who built David a house. And David knew that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. And David took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem after he came from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to David. And these are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shemua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet.
Okay, so this is a summary of what we're about to hit because we know Solomon actually hasn't been born yet. We haven't hit the story about how he gets with the mom. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Right. Well, so I don't know if it's just so when it's saying he took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem, is that implying that these are Jebusite women? Like, are these spoils of war?
Might be, yeah. We also know
because they always have that thing too, where it's like once you conquer the people, you got to take some of their women so that they're to integrate them into your culture or whatever. I don't know. Well, that's what happens with the kings.
So it's going to come up later where God is going to say, "I gave you the wives of your enemies." For exactly the reason I was saying it last time, the power of a king was seen in his fecundity, his ability to have children and to sleep with women. And so if you slept with the king's wife, this was a whole thing. And so we're outright told that God says, "I gave you even to have one of Saul's concubines would to other people say that David had fully taken the kingdom from Saul.
We just skipped, I mean, the most interesting part of the chapter is the story with the Hiram, king of Tyre, which is basically Lebanon. So we suddenly hear that Israel is in peace with Lebanon, and they're not only in peace, they are cooperating together to build stuff. And the question is, why? Why is everybody going to fight with David, and Hiram, king of Tyre, is making peace with him? And well, these are the things. Yes.
Because he's smart. Because he's smarter than the other people.
Yeah, but you have to look at the geopolitics. I mean, the position of Lebanon is such that they have a long border with Syria and a short border with Israel. So the long border with Syria is what's going to kill them in the end. They cannot defend it.
Yeah.
Because they're on the seashore, and Syria is higher, and their piece of land is narrow. And also, these are the Phoenicians. The Hiram, king of Tyre, is actually the king of the Phoenicians, and they are sea merchants. And what he was looking for, he's looking for an approach to the Red Sea. I mean, he is all over the Mediterranean, but he cannot get to the Red Sea, he cannot get to the south, he cannot get to India. And through this joining forces with David, he gets access to the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think you're right. This also, in biblical studies, that this book would be considered Deuteronomistic history. And part of what you have, I think, here as well is it talks about when the king is good, when the people are in a good relationship with God, then the other kings around them will come and kind of give the thumbs up, and like it will be recognized by other people. So having a foreign king come in and kind of give the thumbs up, it seems to be fulfilling this. Like it's showing David's goodness. Other people are recognizing this. If people want to go down these weird rabbit holes, Hiram is also a very, very important character in Freemasonry, because he provides the material that become David's house and later will become Solomon's house. I can't remember all the stuff related to it, but when
Solomon does it, he sends the Israelites to Hiram for them to learn the skills. So the cultural alliance becomes more, they become more integrated in the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, this is like a Freemason rabbit trail. So I looked it up at one point and I can't remember how it relates. And a lot of the Freemasonry material is scarce and bad. So I don't even know what to think of it. But yeah, if people are particularly interested, you can go down that rabbit trail. Cassandra, do you want to talk about this for a second?
Okay, well, because Don asked that it contradicts the idea that it's bad to marry foreign women, right? Which, I mean, we hear a lot about don't marry the Canaanites or whatever. So I don't know, I was thinking, is it the difference between a wife and a concubine? Because a wife is actually like kind of part of your household in a more integral part, I guess you could say. Like she manages the house and directs it. Whereas like the kids that Israel had that were from the slaves were just considered part of the wife's household. So they didn't have their own identity or however, and they didn't direct anything or govern anything. So I'm guessing when they take these concubines from these conquered lands, it's kind of the same thing. They're not really wives. They're slaves. They're kept.
Well, yeah.
Well, no,
Okay, go
I want to push back. First, King Solomon had tons of wives that were not slaves. I mean,
It said he has wives and concubines, so that's what I'm wondering. What is a
Well,
concubine?
but
Somehow
I mean, usually in the court you have an official wife, and the hair comes from the official wife, and you have other wives or lesser, which whose sons are second and third in line. That would be the difference. But these are not slaves, and we can learn this from King Solomon. What need to remember is that the habit of marrying foreign wives was not frowned upon in that period. It's a restriction that was declared after the Jews came back from Babylon. At the time, at the time, it was not forbidden.
I mean, there's restrictions. There was restrictions in like Deuteronomy about certain of those Canaanite tribes, and it was the ones that practiced a lot of like
Child
incestuous,
sacrifice. And,
and incestuous breeding practices, where it even says like, you can't marry them until they've been like living among you for a certain amount of generations, which is almost to be like, okay, the effects of the inbreeding goes away after a certain amount of generations.
Yeah. I mean, well, also I would
like
say that in Solomon's story, it seems like maybe messing around with foreign women was a problem for him.
Well, and it ultimately will say in that section where it talks about not marrying foreign women in the prophetic literature, it says that Solomon was the wisest man, but even he, because of the foreign women, like lost connection with God.
Yeah,
right?
And then
so
maybe it wasn't,
they are going to have an effect.
Yeah, well, so maybe it wasn't so much a law, like a hard restriction, as it was advice. But I mean, you do see another part, like Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that was more of a ploy, though. But when he realizes that she doesn't like she doesn't like Esau's wife, he goes and marries someone from the house of Ishmael because that's part of their family, instead of marrying all the local women that she can't stand.
Right. That's a good catch.
I did want to mention. So I read a book by James B. Jordan. He did a lot of the stuff on it was on Genesis and stuff, but he was talking about the patriarchal system then or whatever, and according to what he researched or whatever, he said the main difference between wives and concubines was not like later on we think about it as more of a legitimate illegitimate thing or whatever, but it was mostly a economic difference depending on what the wife brought to the relationship, as far as like a dowry or whatever, because the wives would have a certain amount of wealth that was theirs, and like the husband couldn't spend it, and it was so that if he died they would be able to take care of themselves. So that was but the concubines were more or less just the relationship, so the husband was more responsible for taking care of their day-to-day needs. So so the king, it's actually kind of the husband and the wife had a pretty egalitarian relationship. In other words, she had some wealth and and maybe private property that was hers and was not his, whereas the concubine came into the relationship and didn't have much to offer besides herself. So most most people now, their wives are technically concubines, unless if you get married to a woman who's independently wealthy, according to that standard. So
I've had a bunch of conversations about concubines in the corner, because I think that term is actually very helpful to understand when people are just living together for long enough that they're legally married, right? But there's what does that mean?
Well, it's probably would be helpful if we had another English word to describe these, because there's more categories then like because if we just have wife and concubine, that can cover a whole bunch of different distinct things. Because really, the distinction that it's talking about here is like wives with money and wives with no money, and then like concubine, in the more like.
Well, and we will oftentimes identify them as like a prostitute, and they aren't prostitutes.
Yeah.
That's not what it is, right? Like there would be some status in the household. You're not at wife status, but it's not without status. They would be considered a part of. Yeah.
So, and obviously, there's other cultures where they were more like, she's just the king's sex slave or whatever, and that's what the way we think of it. But that's not coming from the biblical. That's not what the Bible's categories are describing.
Right.
Literally, Pilegesh means attached to a man. So a wife will be a person in its legal person in her own right, and a concubine will be an attached, will be status as attached to a man, or attaché, we would say nowadays.
So if you were doing your taxes, you could claim the concubines as dependents, but not the wives.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really good. That's very funny. This is
So, well, I guess I think the wife would still have a greater influence, though, right? Like So again, I guess they're marrying foreign women, but it also seems like if your wife was maybe Israel and your concubine was, something outlandish.
Like I feel bad even saying it, but like you'll sometimes see these things where people will get a housekeeper, and like the husband has an affair with the housekeeper or whatever, right? Like, but in Rome, that's part of what you got a housekeeper for, right? Is you if you were the guy in charge of stuff, you hire a girl who's going to take care of the kids and also have sex with the husband when he wants. Like it's just like the wife's recovering or whatever, right? She needs help around the house and also this other stuff. So the concubines are also kind of like they're like maids, they're chefs, they're like my wife and I just watched the movie Memoirs of a Geisha, which I never saw. And she was like, I think you'll like this movie. And I was very confused because I had no interest in this movie. Because I'm like, why do I want to see a movie about like Japanese prostitutes? I don't understand, right? But I didn't understand the difference between a prostitute and a geisha, right? Geisha is more like a concubine, more like it had a role, there was training, there was all this other stuff that was required in order for people to be in these positions, right? It's kind of, I don't know. That's it.
It seems like it's definitely a class thing.
Yeah.
Like a prostitute's low class.
Yeah.
Like you're high class, you still have sex with them and stuff, but they're like educated, and I don't know, there's like a difference in there for some reason.
They're an escort, not a prostitute, right? Or like
people always are just trying to find these creative solutions to solve the problems of like, relationships formed out of obligation. So, maybe wherever your marriage is lacking, if it's not the whole package, there's some sort of a weird, whether it's for conversation or for other things. Like,
when my wife and I were married for 7 years, we knew a couple that were together for as long as we were, but they lived together. They had no joint account, right? There was like certain bills he paid, certain bills she paid. The place that they lived together was only under her name. So he had to like pay her rent and stuff like that. But they were on legal documents. They were what is the term I'm thinking of? When you live with someone for long enough that you're married.
Like common law wife. Common law.
Yeah. So they got certain discounts for being common law and all of this stuff, but they didn't have to get divorced when they broke up, she could be on she received his benefits when he got a better job, all this kind of stuff. And I think a better term might actually be like concubine, like that they're instead of partner. I hate the word partner.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how those things like it's always it's the way that these things affect so many different areas of your life, because like even in my figured it out essentially, like my wife and I would probably be financially able to take advantage of a lot of benefits if we got a divorce and lived in the same house and like I paid her rent. It would, it would, which is stupid. It shouldn't be that way, but because obviously then there's a temptation to do that, which is kind of undermining the thing. But yeah, it's just the way that these attempts to solve problems through various laws or other creations of different solutions always has unforeseen consequences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
To answer Jon God about is the wife the madam? Depends who brought the concubine into the marriage, because we had the case of Hagar. She was property of the wife, so the wife wasn't actually acting as a madam in a sense, but some lots of the doesn't need to be a pimp in the relationship.
Yeah,
the pimp is actually superfluous in the relationship. Like income tax.
Now I'm talking again about. I'm mentioning Memoirs of a Geisha more than once during Bible study. How fun! So another part of Memoirs of a Geisha is that she's looking for someone to become her patron, right? And this is not like the relationship with the patron is the idea that they appreciate their services, right? Like that the idea why someone would want to be a concubine is like, imagine what it would be like to be a concubine of the king. You're living in the palace, you're hanging out with the royal officials, you're going to be educated, you're going to have better food, better wine. Like, there is a kind of security that comes with it, even though, and you're only with the one guy. That's also what he's paying. Like, it's also part of the relationship. And maybe you're not a wife, but you're still living in the palace. That's better than, that's better than living on the street or whatever.
Yeah, it also seems like maybe you wouldn't have the same responsibilities as a wife too, because you're a concubine. So maybe you don't have the burdens in the same way that his wife would. It's also interesting at the end of Memoirs of a Geisha, in the book at least, her happy ending is that she gets this patron who's really nice, and she lives in like a house that he has for her on the side. And that's like happy ending. In the movie though, I think they make her marry him or something like that. Like it's like
no, that is the ending really? In it as well. Okay. Yeah. Like it's the same thing. It's like that's what you're watching. It's about the relationship of a concubine, essentially. It's like, and this is the thing too. Again, going back to this idea of the to have sex with someone that a king had sex with would be seen as a usurping act. That means he's not going to discard these women. These women cannot be discarded, because if someone else sleeps with them, that would be seen as an attack on the king. So the king has to take care of these women forever. That's part of what's going on. And again, God is going to have this conversation with David, because allowing him to have these concubines is really in relationship to the security of his kingship. They took it's kind of implied, wives from Saul and wives from all these other kings, right?
Right.
Yeah. The real question is, would parents be proud?
Yeah, I would like to point that in the main story here, everybody keeps killing everybody, and there's going to be quite serious wars in a sentences, and lots of dead guys. So you have a lot of extra women. So if you want your daughter to settle and have some kids, and if you want to have grandchildren, you have to settle for the status of a concubine.
And that's what's currently happening with the Chads and the Alphas and everything. Is like, that's exactly what it is that, and I've known people that are in relationships like this. They want a relationship with a guy who's high powered, and even if that means that they're not the first, but they're number 4 on the list, some people say it's better than nothing, right? Like, I know people, I have connection with people who had children with people that had a lot of money, and the guy is not involved at all and just pays for the kids, like, to be raised by the mom independently, right? Like, and to answer Jan God again, yes, people would be proud of their daughters to be the concubine of a king, right? That's the beginning of Memoirs of a Geisha, is the idea. It's a good movie. I do recommend it. It's good. It's good, and it's not a ton of sex. I was just like, I'm not interested in this Japanese romp, but it is not that at all.
To continue the conversation with Jan God, a cat lady is a lady who's married to the state. There was no social security in the kingdom of David. If you want somebody to take care of you in your old age, you better have lots of kids, and you have to have lots of kids extra because there's a war going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cat ladies were prostitutes.
Yeah. Well, and so the beginning of Memoirs of a Geisha is that the girl is sold. Like, she's like, the parents can't afford. They can't deal with this. So it's still a position. The person's still alive.
Yeah. It's funny because I just keep thinking, I've said it several times, but like, because all this stuff, it's like, oh, it's all based in evolutionary psychology, and evolutionary psychology seems to always result in Bronze Age morality. So,
yeah. Okay, I would like to continue so that we finish this chapter. So we still got
just a nitpicking note: we are not in the Bronze Age anymore. We are now in the Iron Age. So
Michael.
So they're better off than we are now.
Yeah, so morality is slowly improving.
Well, this is something that I had a conversation with someone, because again, concubines, I think, may have actually had more legal status, had more status than women that are number 4 for a Chad. They get nothing out of that. So we might actually be, like Michael said, in Bronze Age, not in Iron Age. Like, it's not that good. Okay, Sandy, I haven't heard enough from you. So, Sandy, I'm going to get you to read. So from verse 17 there.
Yeah. Sorry, the sound and video are still very choppy for me. Where are you at? 17?
17, yeah.
When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to search for David. But David heard of it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand?" And the Lord said to David, "Go up, for I will certainly give the Philistines into your hand." And David came to Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. And he said, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breaking flood." Therefore, the name of that place was called Baal Perazim. And the Philistines left their idols there, and David and his men carried them away.
Okay. So just a quick little bit within there. First off, remember that David was with the lords of the Philistines before, right? And they saw, like, if you're making this as a movie, you get the same cast of characters that say that David is no good, and he's going to come back to bite us in the ass, kind of a thing. Well, here he is, right? So these are the guys that would have even went to battle with him a couple of times. Now see him as an enemy that they have to come down and destroy.
I don't get this up and down. If David is in a citadel, usually I would find citadels up on the hill. But David, should I go up from the citadel to the battleground? So it's a citadel underground. It doesn't make sense to me.
Is it related to the Philistines being at the waterway? The water? Because that would be like up as in north?
Why is up north? Where else do we find north and up being confused?
That's a Western English convention.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, I have English-speaking wife, and we always get confused when she said we have to go up the street, and sometimes the streets will go down and north, and I will just not understand what it means. But that gives me a hint that if Jerusalem is, the Temple Mount, and probably the citadel of the Jebusites is up on the mountain. And it gives me a hint that David's first palace was actually not up on the mountain, it was in the valley below. If somebody wants to look for evidence for David being in Jerusalem, it should look in the valley rather in the mountain.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
we need a hand gesture tradition that we don't have. We need to see where they were pointing when they were talking. Then it would have made sense.
Yeah, but I think that makes a lot of sense, because we always, like, when David takes the head of Goliath to Jerusalem, that's part of the story, is he takes the head and like shows it to Jerusalem. It's in the hand of the Jebusites at that time. So it's more like David says, one day I'm going to take you, kind of a thing. But the idea being, like, even the kingdom, the capital before it gets moved to Jerusalem is Hebron, is Hebron, right? It's how it's appearing in the English text here. So that idea of like the most secure place for David is not actually what will be the capital. We're kind of imagining it will be eventually here, where the palace and everything's going to be built and all the fortifications and stuff. But like, there might be a safer place that's hidden away somewhere.
Also, how often would the wives will see their husband? It's a question that has been raised. Not so often if you keep having babies all the time. I mean, people were multiplying like rabbits at the time. So you are with your baby for some 2 years. And then you need to see your husband again.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, when I think about King Solomon and having 1,000 wives, I would think, like, how often do they ever see anyone that's like not another wife or another eunuch? So that's what I was gonna say. In that way, it seems like there's like maybe a certain isolation. I don't know, like, about the roles, about them going out anywhere else. It seems like you would just be within the palace.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I could see that being a wife who is like a modern day single cat lady in that sense. It's like, because what else?
And I think you get a reference somewhere later in this book that the concubines tended the palace. So it's like the upkeep of the building would also be done by them. Just like very strange. But again, that's why I was comparing it to like a maid or something like that. And especially with certain celebrities, you'll actually get this where it's like it's kind of like acknowledged that there's a relationship, and she's not just being paid to keep house, but she is also being paid to keep house. That is part of what they're getting paid for. A thing that I find particularly interesting, which I think Christians need to know, is that the word Baal is just a word meaning master. So the language is like Baal Perazim means Lord of breaking through. So the idea that God has the Lord, so that's Adonai, has broken through. So David, in this naming, calls Hashem, calls him Baal, right? I think Christians are moderately scandalized by that because we think of Baal as just being the title of a pagan deity, but it literally has a notion of a master or a lord, even a husband. So in a Jewish marriage ceremony, the husband is called Baal, right, Yoav?
Okay, so we do not refer to our God by his name. We refer to him as the Lord. And the same happened with the Baal. He had a name. The name was Hadad, and he was the storm god. Mm-hmm. And after a few centuries, people, out of reverence, stopped calling him Hadad and called him the Lord, which is in Hebrew the Baal.
Yeah.
And then the name propagated to Greece, to the Greek. So the Greek would have gods. I mean, they have lots of gods. And they will, in the process of moving from east to west, the names got garbled a bit. So he was not called Baal anymore by the Greek. Also, his companion, he had a wife, and she was called Anat, and she was a warrior goddess. And when she moved to Greece, her name was garbled a bit and changed a bit from language to language. But still, the Greek in Athens would have a goddess of war, and they will have a god that was adapted from the Baal, but then he was not the storm god anymore because they had Jupiter as the storm god, so we will have to adopt other professions. For example, he can learn to play the musical instrument, like. Yeah. Okay, and that was a comment to Jon God, and I hope he remembers the thread. Sorry to snatch the conversation.
No. I think that's very good. And another example of that is, like Christians believe that there is a pagan deity named Moloch. Moloch is just Melech, which is the word for king, right? Melech Eolam, the king of the universe, right? The idea that the role and Adon or Adonai also becomes like there'll be gods that will be referred to as like Adon, or even earthly masters. Adonai Bezek is an example within the text. Okay, let's finish this.
I want to ask Jon God to first stop whatever thread is pushing, and second, remember that the house in that period did not have much for furniture. The idea of a table and chairs is very, very modern. So quit thinking about furniture. There weren't any.
Maybe a really nice rug, a ground cushion, perhaps. Okay. Sandy said she has to leave soon. So Sandy, finish us up for this chapter so that we can bid you adieu, because you have told me in the private chat that you got to get going.
And the Philistines came up yet again and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, "You shall not go up. Go around to their rear and come against them opposite the balsam trees. And when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, then rouse yourself, for then the Lord has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines." And David did as the Lord commanded him and struck down the Philistines from Geba to Gezer.
Okay, the only thing that I want to, again, reiterate is the idea of this question of how David is continually inquiring of Hashem. So there's an asking, and God responds, and it's not a yes or no answer. This is much more than a yes or no answer, so it's not just a flipping of a coin. From that, there's an implication of where he's supposed to go and what that strategy is in order to be victorious. Cassandra, and Yoav, you're ruining Yanni's fun, which I think is a great compliment to you. Yeah. My day has been ruined. Okay. Oh, that's a piece of furniture. Is that a bed? What is that?
That's so fun.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys know the movie he referenced earlier, Soylent Green.
Oh yeah.
The furniture, but yeah. Wait, were you asking me something?
No, not really. I mean, Soylent Green is a good movie. I think I recommend it. I haven't seen it since I was in high school, but I remember liking it a lot.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything to add? I don't have anything to add except for, again, thinking how interesting it is that David can inquire of God, and God gives complicated responses. You don't go in front, you go around, you hide in the trees, you hear for the march, and that's when you attack.
I assume this is the ephod. It doesn't always mention it, but I assume that's what he's doing.
Right, through the priesthood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of, the way that the chapters break, this feels like it doesn't have that much to do with what we just read in a way, or like it stops at a one place.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? Yoav is not going to be reading for the play. It's nothing against Yoav. There's only a certain number of roles, and I kind of cast people based on what I thought would be good dynamics for the people. You'll see.
So I'm assuming it's a very talky play. Like
yes. There is Sandy will be a character who participates in a sword fight more than once, but it's going to be over the internet, so she's not going to be able to have a sword fight with Sherry.
Oh, but Sandy should make a little sword so that we know.
Yeah, if like you want to get a little sword. One of those little toothpick ones that you get from like a bartender. And just like
that'd be good. I don't know, a little prop sword. I was thinking you could make it out of cardboard.
Yeah.
So you could have visualizations.
Yeah, just to help. Yeah. Okay, let me do a check-in with everyone before we go. Cassandra, I feel like you've said everything you wanted to say. Sandy is leaving right away. Bye, Sandy. That's totally fine. See you next week, where you're going to hear a lot from Sandy.
Okay,
Cassandra.
Peace.
Yeah. Cassandra, did you have anything else to bring? To share?
No, I think that's good. We had a nice, lengthy conversation about concubines, which is really all I had on my agenda. So
I really feel good about that concubine discussion, guys. I think that was very, like, the things that float to the surface. Okay, Michael.
I'm good.
Excellent. Kirk,
Remember to stay off the streets.
stay off the. I thought for 2 seconds I thought that was like parents. It's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Like a gang thing, but that's not what you meant.
You don't know what I meant.
I think I can get. Okay, Yoav, we end with you.
Yep, we were reading the English translation, which is also an explanation. When I read it in the Hebrew, it's garbled. Parts of it that don't make sense. Lots of words are corrupted. I have a feeling of a very, very ancient text, because the more words that I don't understand, and then most errors that got into the text, the more I feel that we are really talking about text that arrive from that period. That doesn't read like something like a 5th century or 8th century. It sounds to me like something ancient.
Yeah. This is. I mean, I don't want to offend Jacob, who may be watching, but this is one of the reasons why I don't think the Masoretic text is actually perfect, because we have little bits like this where every now and then the reading in the Septuagint seems like it's older, and you'll get other readings in these other ones where we go, okay, what happened to the text here? What is going on? Now, sometimes the issue with the Septuagint is they give in, like what Yoav was just saying, an explanation. And so there we have evidence of something being older. But there's a couple of things within this text in particular where, yeah, there's issues. We'll just say that.
I think you should talk to Jacob about this.
Carefully when you talk to Jacob.
Yes, I'll try to be very careful. Maybe we should just go based on one piece of text, and it should be that one where, is it Goliath's brother or is it Goliath? Who gets killed by the other guy? Do you guys know what story I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Yeah, there's a whole bit, and there's a bunch of textual people that think that it means that we should get rid of that we should not consider David to actually be the killer of Goliath through textual criticism. I don't think that's what's happening, but we'll get there eventually. We'll get there.
Was that conversation that Paul had the other day with Nathan Jacobs. Really, he highlighted the problem with the way that textual criticism has been done for a long way. For a long time. The more atheistic you can be in your presuppositions, the better. The more critical you are, the better. The less you believe, the better.
Right.
And that just leads you to certain conclusions, and it causes you to be totally ignorant to other ones. So it's very interesting to hear Yoav say that it seems older, because basically their opinion is it didn't exist until it was written on the oldest piece of paper we have. Right. This stuff was just pure fiction that was written at the exact moment when the oldest manuscript that we currently have is dated.
Yeah, that's also why I like the reference to other books, because every now and then it's just like, look, if you want to learn more about this, there's a good history book I can recommend. And it's just like, okay, so this isn't the history book that I thought it was then. This seems to be something else. This seems to be concerned about something different. So this is in the Hebrew Bible, this is prophetic. It's not a history book. I do think this is historical, but it is a prophetic piece. It's trying to reveal things. Okay, look, I love you guys. We lost Sandy, and what's even the point? What's the point of continue on if we lost Sandy? So hopefully I'll see you guys in the chat next week, where we will be doing a reading of the play within a play. That's the name of the play. The name of the play is Within a Play.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll see you guys then.
Peace.
Okay? Peace. Shalom.